It was a very difficult question. He was playful and mischievous, so he may seem a little childish, but that didn't mean he was mature. When he diligently attended to the affairs of state or gave occasional advice, he seemed like a thoughtful and wise old man among the old. There are parts like that, and parts like that. Winfred, who had been thinking for a long time, finally answered truthfully. So you think I'm not trustworthy? He thought he could relax a little now that he had solved a difficult question, but then his father asked him another question. Luckily, this question wasn't too difficult to answer. No, that's not true. Look at that. This father couldn't resist the urge to play and grow up. Sure, I still have many flaws, and I can't say I'm a perfect adult, but I still believe I'm a pretty reliable emperor. Hiram tilted his head and looked Winfred in the eyes as if seeking his son's approval, and Winfred nodded as if confirming his father's words. And if everyone grew up just as serious and rigid, what fun would the world have? Only with adults like me does the world become more colorful. Hiram pointed his thumb at himself and smiled mischievously, then smiled kindly and gave his son a gentle pat on the back. So you too. I hope you don't deny yourself in the name of maturity. It is not a sin that you remain so innocent and pure. Has your personality ever interfered with the duties of the crown prince? Have you ever caused anyone trouble? I don't think there is any. Hiram was right. Winfred could be a little childish, but that never caused problems. It's okay to mature a little more slowly. After all, you're doing it right. Just stay where you are now, doing what you need to do, step by step. I hope this dad helps you become who you really are, not the person you made up. Yes, father. Winfred nodded silently. His head was a whirlwind. He still wanted to be a trustworthy man and earn Roderick's approval, but he realized that the way he had been doing it was wrong. Why did I realize now that being quiet and polite doesn't make you an adult? Winfred, who had been silently organizing her thoughts, opened her mouth again with her usual radiant smile. But still, father. I think you need to control your desire to play a little. It was a harsh word that hurt his father. That? This guy. As Hiram looked at his son with a sullen expression, Winfred chuckled mischievously. Hiram, who had feigned disgust, finally burst into laughter upon hearing his son's laughter. It was a moment of incredible harmony. Did you say you would attend Marquisa Lucent's banquet, Rachel? Ophelia asked, looking at her nephew. The Duke, Duchess, Isla, and Isidore's family, except for newborn Noah, gathered for dinner. Yes, Aunt. Rachel, who loved to play, nodded with bright eyes. His eyes seemed to anticipate something, like being paced. That expectation was never disappointed. Ophelia smiled, as if she could see through it, and said, "It's nice. Then I'll have to buy you a dress. I'll call a designer, so pick something you like." Oh really? My aunt is the best after all. And Michelle, the second daughter, who had been watching the scene silently, opened her mouth with a look of bewilderment. Why do you want to buy clothes again? You packed so much at home. And I don't understand why you would want to go to such a noisy banquet. What do you know? A girl as boring as you. Did you know? This girl was invited to a banquet attended by the crown prince of the Palace Empire. Rachel cupped her hands on both cheeks and spoke as if in ecstasy, and Michelle's doubts grew as she did so. Although he had no interest in banquets and disliked crowded places, he could have predicted that the crown prince would not attend such an ordinary banquet. How the hell did they invite us to such a grand banquet? To the imperial nobility, we are just louts from a foreign country. Oh, just some louts from a foreign country. Watch your language, Miss Michelle. I am the niece of the Duchess of Weishafen. So you're saying you sold your aunt's name? As the sisters began babbling again, Ophelia and Roderick ignored them and resumed eating, thinking, here we go again. Because there wasn't a single day that Rachel and Michelle didn't argue since they arrived at the Empire. However, Isla and Isidore couldn't concentrate on food for different reasons. Isidore was already delirious before his daughters even started arguing. He had been unable to sleep night after night, immersed in his research to find a way to break Isla's curse without anyone noticing. In fact, for a research junkie who suffered from constant sleep deprivation, drowsiness was not a big problem. But the reason he was so lost now was because, despite all his efforts, he had struggled to find a way to break the curse. After observing Isla's curse and analyzing the data she left behind, it seems that a spell has been cast on her so that only the caster can break it. So all that was left was to wait for a call from his home country. But he was so worried about his daughter that he couldn't look at his younger sister, so he was furious inside. And Isla? Oddly enough, she was so distracted by the news that the crown prince was going to attend the banquet her cousin was attending. He wonders how Winfred is doing. Did you think about her sometimes? He wondered if his uncle and aunt were safe. Isla was so caught up in her thoughts that she didn't even know where the food was going. I've never been to a banquet like that, but I imagine it will be full of beautiful young women dressed like Rachel. Thinking about it, Isla bit her lip anxiously. She didn't understand why she felt so uncomfortable, but the thought of Winfred surrounded by beautiful women made her feel a pang of anger. Is it jealousy? Isla, who had been lost in thought for a moment, was surprised to understand what her feelings were. She thought it was obvious that she was jealous that Winfred enjoyed freedom while she lived a life wrapped up in heavy, dark things like revenge, curses, and murder. In fact, that was not the reason. In any case, Isla had strangely diagnosed her feelings that way. Feeling jealous of your first friend's happiness, you scold yourself for being so intolerant. Yo, Isla, why? Roderick, sensing a change in his daughter, tried to speak to her, but Ophelia grabbed his arm and stopped him. She knew why, so she told him to leave her alone. A mischievous smile appeared on Ophelia's face as she looked at her daughter, absorbed in her thoughts and with blushing cheeks. How are you? Do you like my actions? Hiram leaned against the table, chin resting on his hand, eyebrows raised. It was a look of melancholy unbecoming of the emperor of a great nation. Roderick couldn't help but give an affirmative answer, even with a dazed laugh. It was frustrating, but Hiram's achievements were perfect. Yes, Your Majesty. You are really wise. Roderick carefully read the documents the emperor had given him and was impressed again. It was a document that secretly monitored those who helped Byron, Isla reported, and carefully collected and organized evidence proving their involvement in the betrayal. At this rate, it wouldn't be a problem to wipe out the rebels in one fell swoop. What did I do? Your daughter is so smart. He gathered all this evidence, one by one, at such a young age. Hiram waved his hand coldly, exuding humility, but even his gesture seemed exaggerated and playful. Of course, his compliments to Isla were completely sincere. As an emperor with a strong desire to gather talent, it was true that he coveted Isla. In her memory, she was just a baby learning to walk, but when did she grow up so fast and achieve such great things? That's why the tragedy he had to endure was even more heartbreaking, and he felt even more sorry. It's frustrating having to just watch, knowing that they are preparing for rebellion. How is your daughter? Hiram was one of the few people who knew about Isla's curse. He couldn't hide such a momentous matter from the emperor, and Roderick told him because he was his best friend. Go slowly. I'm doing my best, but it seems difficult. Roderick, his tongue bitter, opened his mouth with a tired expression. Yeah. We have to lift that girl's curse quickly. Only then can we deal with these traitors. Hiram also smacked his lips bitterly. There had been times when the fact that the leader of the traitors was his blood brother had been unbearably painful, but now he seemed to have gotten used to it. On sleepless nights, the self-loathing he felt for feeling dulled by his status as emperor tormented him even more. And he still felt that way, having to ask such a favor from his close friend and favorite. Subject. The weight of the emperor's position seemed to weigh on his shoulders. I hesitate to say it, but I think your daughter's suggestion is a very good idea.